Here's a lightly paraphrased version of your video script. I've maintained the original tone, structure, and style, just shifted word order and phrasing slightly as requested. Canada has long been known for its reputation as the polite and loyal British colony. While its neighbor to the south rebelled and broke away, the British Northern Territory stayed true and wanted no part in that revolution. However, just like many other territories in the British Empire, Canada too experienced its own armed uprising, something that might come as a surprise to many. Reforms. At this time, Canada as we know it didn't really exist. Instead, it was a collection of British colonies. The two most significant among them were Upper Canada, with Toronto as its capital, and to the north, Lower Canada, which was centered around Montreal and home to a predominantly French-speaking population. Throughout the early 1800s, people in both Upper and Lower Canada were pushing for major reforms. If you're wondering how Britain responded, the answer is it didn't. This was largely due to the fact that both colonies were governed by closed, anti-democratic oligarchies. In Lower Canada, power was held by the Chateau clique, mostly English-speaking elites who wanted the French-speaking majority to assimilate into English culture, which, unsurprisingly, didn't go down well with the locals. In Upper Canada, a group known as the Family Compact held sway, and they too were firmly against democratic reform. Naturally, these ruling cliques faced opposition. In Upper Canada, the main figure leading the reform movement was William Lyon Mackenzie. In Lower Canada, it was Louis-Joseph Papineau, head of a group called the Patriots. In 1832, after British troops shot protesters in Montreal, Papineau sent a list of demands to London asking for reform. The British government and local authorities in Lower Canada decided that no changes were necessary. Everything was perfectly fine, apparently. Over the next 5 years, tensions rose and the political gridlock deepened. Then, in November 1837, things started to spiral. The government of Lower Canada attempted to arrest Papineau. He escaped to the United States, and his supporters began resisting government crackdowns with force. The authorities were unable to quickly contain the unrest, and what followed was an open rebellion against British authority. Inspired by events in Lower Canada, the people of Upper Canada soon followed. Mackenzie and his supporters launched their own rebellion. Initially, they saw some success, largely because British troops had been deployed elsewhere. But the revolutionaries had one key disadvantage. They weren't trained soldiers. Still, that didn't stop Mackenzie from declaring the Republic of Canada, which collapsed almost immediately when local militia forces defeated the rebels. You might assume that the Canadian Revolution ended there. But here's a fun fact. Fun fact, it didn't. The uprisings attracted considerable attention from the United States, where many sympathized with the Canadian cause. Some Americans even formed groups to support Mackenzie and Papineau, with the goal of helping to turn Canada into a republic. One such group, known as the Hunter Brothers, eventually crossed the border and launched an invasion into Canada. Before long, British forces began killing American citizens, escalating tensions significantly. Needless to say, armed American incursions into Canadian territory alarmed both London and Washington. Neither wanted a full-scale war. Ultimately, the two governments reached an understanding and agreed to crack down on Americans crossing the border. Meanwhile, in Canada, the Lower Canadian Rebellion was completely crushed by the close of 1838. Conclusion. So what were the consequences of all this for Canada and the rebels? Determined to avoid another uprising, Britain tasked Lord Durham with investigating and recommending reforms. His primary and initially only implemented recommendation was to merge Upper and Lower Canada into a single colony. As for the rebellion's leaders, they remained in exile in the United States for a time, though they were eventually pardoned and returned home. And with that, the Canadian Revolution came to an end. It didn't lead to an independent republic, but it did, in a meaningful way, lay the groundwork for the creation of modern Canada. Thanks for watching this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. A special thank you goes to all my Patreon supporters, who you can see on screen now, and an extra special thanks to James Bissonette, David Archaeologist, Party Boy Co., Danny Maloney, Colin Castleman, Rob Waterhouse, Aaron the White, Michael Reynolds, H. Wyan Emperor, Chris Wicker, Gustav Swan, Gareth Turner, Spinning Three Plates, David Silverman, Winston Cawood, Maggie Pikskowski, Christian Chekai, Anthony Beckett, Robert Wetzel, Sky Chappelle, and Ike.